I remember the moment with perfect clarity, though I have tried 10,000 times to forget it. The morning shift bell had just rung across Manufactorum level Sigma 7, its bronze voice echoing through the prayer-ribbed vaults above our workstations, and I was reaching for my circuit-blessed stylus when Overseer Krell's shadow fell across my desk. Not his body, just his shadow, elongated by the flickering lumens overhead, stretching like a black finger across the parchment forms I had been completing for the past 6 hours. The shadow paused. That was all. A simple hesitation in its movement across my workspace, but in that pause I felt the entire weight of the Imperium shift its attention toward me, like a vast and terrible eye opening in the dark. "Scribe Tertius Ven," he said, and his voice carried that particular flatness that all administrative functionaries develop after decades of reducing human lives to numerical designations. "You will accompany me to Processing Chamber 12. Processing Chamber 12. Not the medical bay, where I had gone 3 months prior for my mandatory inoculations. Not the recalibration cells, where we were taken quarterly to have our work efficiency evaluated and our devotion quotients measured by the tech priest's arcane instruments. Processing Chamber 12 was in the sublevels, in the forgotten bowels of the Manufactorum, where the air tasted of rust and old fear, where the lumens were always failing, and the sound of water dripping onto metal created rhythms that almost sounded like words if you listened too long. I stood. My legs felt distant, as though they belonged to someone else. Around me, the other scribes kept their eyes locked on their parchments, their styluses moving in perfect synchrony, scratching out requisition forms and tally marks and prayer seals with mechanical precision. Not one of them looked up. Not one of them acknowledged what was happening. That told me everything I needed to know about what came next. The walk through the Manufactorum took 17 minutes by my internal chronometer, though it felt like hours. We passed through the great hall where the servo skulls drifted overhead, their empty eye sockets glowing with targeting augers as they surveyed the endless rows of workers. We descended via the east stairwell, spiral stairs of black iron that wound down through the levels like the coils of some vast serpent. With each level, the temperature dropped. With each level, the sound of the Manufactorum's heartbeat, that perpetual grinding of machinery and chanting of tech litanies, grew more distant, replaced by silence and the steady drip of condensation. Krell walked 3 paces ahead of me, his red administratum robes whispering against the floor. He did not look back, did not speak, did not acknowledge my presence except to occasionally pause at a locked portal and tap his clearance codes into the gene scanner. Each door opened with a pneumatic hiss that sounded like a last breath being released. I tried to recall what I might have done wrong. In my mind, I reviewed the past weeks with desperate precision. Had I filed an incorrect form, mistranscribed a sacred numeral, used an unsanctioned abbreviation in my reports? I was a model scribe, had been for 14 years since my assignment to Sigma 7. My efficiency ratings were consistently above threshold. My prayer compliance was documented and verified. I had never missed a shift, never questioned an order, never expressed anything but absolute devotion to the God Emperor and gratitude for my position in his divine machine. But none of that mattered, I realized with growing horror. If they were taking me to Processing Chamber 12, then the accusation had already been made, the investigation already conducted, the verdict already determined. I was not being taken to answer charges, I was being taken to receive correction. The final door opened into a corridor I had never seen before, though I had worked in this Manufactorum for 14 years. The walls here were older, the construction dating back to the facility's founding perhaps 2 centuries prior. The metal was pitted with age, stained with substances I did not want to identify. The lumens were replaced here with actual torches, their flames casting dancing shadows that made the corridor seem to writhe like a living thing. Processing Chamber 12 stood at the corridor's end, its door marked with the inquisitorial seal. The stylized eye with its skull and crossbones emblem rendered in red paint that looked far too fresh. Krell entered his codes a final time. The door opened. He gestured me inside and did not follow. The chamber was smaller than I had imagined, perhaps 5 meters square, with walls of bare rockret and a single lumen overhead that provided just enough light to see by, but not enough to banish the shadows in the corners. In the center of the room stood a metal chair bolted to the floor, its arms equipped with restraint clamps, its back adorned with connection ports, for devices I recognized from technical manuals but had never seen in practice. Behind the chair stood a figure in black robes, face hidden behind a chrome skull mask, servo arms extending from their back like the limbs of some mechanical insect. But it was the man seated at the room's single desk who held my attention. He wore the formal attire of an inquisitorial interrogator, black leather coat adorned with purity seals, a high collar bearing the Aquila emblem, gloves of what looked like human skin, though I prayed it was synthetic. His face was unremarkable, middle-aged, neither handsome nor ugly, with the kind of features that would be forgotten moments after seeing them. His eyes, though, his eyes were the pale grey of recycled water, and they held no warmth, no mercy, no recognition of my humanity. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair. I sat. The restraints closed around my wrists and ankles with a precision that spoke of thousands of previous uses. The cold metal against my skin made me gasp, and in that gasp I tasted the chamber's air. Old copper, chemical sterilizer, something else beneath it all, the faint sweetness of decay. The interrogator opened a data slate and scrolled through it with one gloved finger. "Scribe Tertius Ven," he read aloud. "Assigned to Manufactorum Level Sigma 7, Department of Resource Allocation, Station 447, 14 years of service, efficiency rating, 94.7%, devotional compliance, 98.2%, no demerits, no infractions, no complaints from superiors." He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes that was worse than anger or disgust. I saw indifference. "Exemplary record," he said, "which makes the accusation all the more damning." "What accusation?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted speaking. One does not question an inquisitorial interrogator. One does not demand explanations from the Emperor's chosen instruments. But he smiled, a thin expression that never reached his eyes. "You truly do not know," he said, and it was not a question. "How delicious. They never do, at first." He set down the data slate and leaned forward, his elbows on the desk, his fingers steepled before his face. "Tell me, Scribe Ven, do you know a man named Hestor Grell?" The name meant nothing to me. I searched my memory, reviewed mental rosters of everyone I had worked with, everyone I had encountered in 14 years of service. Nothing. "No," I said, "I do not know that name." "Are you certain?" The interrogator's voice remained pleasant, conversational, as though we were discussing the weather or the latest tithe reports. "Think carefully. Hestor Grell, a loader, assigned to Cargo Bay 17. Approximately 40 years old, balding, missing 2 fingers on his left hand from an industrial accident 7 years ago." I shook my head. "I have never been to Cargo Bay 17. My duties confine me to Sigma 7. I do not know this man." "And yet," the interrogator said, pulling out a second data slate, "he knows you, or rather, he claims to know you." He turned the slate toward me, and I saw a picked capture of a man matching the description, his face bruised and swollen, his eyes wide with terror. This was recorded 6 days ago, in this very room. Hestor Grell was brought here on suspicion of possessing heretical materials, specifically a book of prohibited philosophy, imported from a renegade colony. During his interrogation, when asked who else might have been exposed to such materials, he provided several names. The interrogator's finger tapped the slate. Yours was among them. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. I have never possessed heretical materials. I have never even seen. He claims, the interrogator continued, as though I had not spoken, that you were part of a reading circle, that you met in the lower maintenance tunnels, level Gamma 9, every fourth rest day, that you discussed forbidden texts and questioned the divine authority of the administratum. He paused. He was quite specific in his accusations, Scribe Ven. He described your appearance, your mannerisms, even the scar on your left thumb from a stylus accident 3 years ago. I looked down at my thumb, at the small white scar there, barely visible. How could this stranger know such details? How could he describe me with such precision if we had never met? Unless he's lying, I said, my voice cracking. He must be lying to save himself, accusing random people too. We have verified his confession through biochemical analysis, the interrogator said calmly. The Verita serum readings indicate he believes he is telling the truth, which means either he is genuinely deluded, or he is correct, or, and here his smile widened slightly, or you are lying to me right now. The figure behind the chair moved, servo arms unfolding with a whisper of well-oiled mechanisms. I felt something cold touch the back of my neck, felt the sharp prick of needles penetrating skin, felt the sudden rush of warmth spreading through my skull like liquid fire. The truth serum will take approximately 90 seconds to reach full efficacy, the interrogator said, consulting a chronometer on his wrist. During that time, I suggest you consider very carefully whether you wish to continue protesting your innocence, or whether you would prefer to make a full confession. The Emperor's mercy is reserved for the repentant, Scribe Vane, but his wrath is eternal for those who persist in falsehood. The chamber began to tilt, or perhaps it was my perception that tilted. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like lungs, and the lumen overhead pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I tried to focus on the interrogator's face, but it kept fragmenting, breaking apart into geometric shapes that reformed into something almost but not quite human. I don't know him, I said, and my voice sounded distant, echoing. I have never met Hestor Grell. I have never attended any reading circle. I have never possessed heretical materials. I am loyal. I am faithful. I have served the Emperor every day of my life since my assignment to this manufactorum. The interrogator watched me with those pale grey eyes. The serum says you believe that, he murmured. Fascinating. Either you are a mutant with natural resistance to Veritaserum, or you possess genuine conviction in your innocence, or, he paused, tilting his head, or, your memory has been edited. Memory edited. The words sent a spike of terror through the chemical fog in my brain. Memory editing was the domain of tech priests and inquisitors, a process so invasive, so dangerous, that it was reserved for only the most extreme cases. To suggest that my memory had been tampered with was to suggest that I had been involved in something so terrible that even the knowledge of it had to be excised from my mind. I would never, I began, but the interrogator raised one gloved hand. We will return to this, he said. First, I have other questions. Standard protocol. He consulted his data slate again. Do you now, or have you ever harbored doubt regarding the divinity of the God Emperor? No, I said. The answer came automatically, drilled into me by decades of conditioning. Do you believe the Imperium of man to be justified in all its actions? Yes. Do you accept that your life belongs to the Emperor, and that your death, when it comes, will be in his service? Yes. Have you ever experienced visions, dreams, or auditory hallucinations that could not be readily explained by natural causes? I hesitated. Every human being experienced dreams, but the way he phrased the question, the emphasis on could not be readily explained, made me wonder what answer he sought. Everyone dreams, I said carefully. "Describe your most recent dream," he commanded. I tried to remember. The serum made thinking difficult, made my memories feel slippery and strange. "I was in the manufactorum," I said slowly. But it was empty. All the desks were empty, all the workers gone. I walked through the halls calling for someone, anyone, but no one answered. And then I heard singing. Coming from below, I followed the sound down through levels I didn't recognize, and I found, "Yes?" The interrogator leaned forward. "What did you find?" "A door," I whispered. "A door made of—" "I don't know." It looked like metal, but it moved like water, rippling and shifting, and the singing was coming from behind it. Beautiful singing, like nothing I had ever heard. I reached for the handle, and I stopped. I woke up. The interrogator exchanged a glance with the figure behind me. "When did you have this dream?" "Last night," I said. "Or was it last night? Maybe it was several nights ago. I don't remember." He made a notation on his data slate. "Have you had this dream before?" Had I? I tried to remember, but my memories felt like they were behind glass, distorted and unreachable. I don't know. Maybe? How many times? I don't know. Interesting. The interrogator set down his slate and stood, walking around the desk to approach me. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small object, a carved wooden disc, perhaps 5 centimeters in diameter, covered in symbols I did not recognize. He held it before my eyes. "Do you recognize this?" I stared at it. The symbols seemed to writhe, to rearrange themselves the longer I looked. "No," I said. "I've never seen it before." "Are you certain?" He moved it closer. "Look carefully." The symbols continued to shift, and as they shifted, they began to form patterns, words, almost, or not words, but something that communicated meaning directly into my mind without the need for language. I felt something stir in the back of my consciousness, some buried knowledge trying to surface, and I gasped. "I see," the interrogator said softly, withdrawing the disc. "You have been exposed. The symbols resonate with you. That means you have seen them before, even if you do not consciously remember." "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "This," he said, holding up the disc, "was found in Hestor Grell's possession. It is a focusing charm used by certain sects to facilitate communication with entities that exist beyond the veil of reality. Entities that the Imperium has declared anathema, entities whose very names are forbidden to speak." He tucked the disc back into his coat. "The fact that it resonates with you confirms that you have been exposed to such influences, whether willingly or not." "But I haven't." Desperation clawed at my throat. "I don't know what you're showing me. I don't know this Hestor Grell. I have never attended any forbidden meetings. I am innocent." "Innocence," the interrogator mused, "is not the same as ignorance. You may genuinely believe yourself innocent, Scribe Ven, but innocence implies a choice, an active resistance to corruption. What if you were exposed without your knowledge? What if the corruption has already taken root in your mind, growing like a cancer, waiting for the proper trigger to activate?" He returned to his desk and picked up a third data slate. "We have reviewed your work product over the past 6 months. Do you know what we found?" I shook my head, unable to speak. "Patterns," he said. "Subtle deviations in your requisition forms, specific arrangements of numerals that, when isolated and analyzed, form a sequence, a code. We ran it through our cryptographic engines. And do you know what it translates to?" Terror flooded through me. I would never. "It translates to a passage from the Lectitio Divinitatus," he continued, "but not the approved version. An older version, from before the Council of Machinarium edited out the heterodox sections, specifically A passage discussing the nature of faith and the possibility that the Emperor's divinity exists as a psychic reflection of humanity's collective belief rather than as an objective truth. He looked up at me. "You have been encoding heresy into imperial documents, Scribe Ven, whether you know it or not." The room spun. My vision blurred. "That's impossible," I whispered. I wouldn't. "And yet you did." The interrogator's voice remained calm, clinical, as though discussing a mechanical malfunction rather than the destruction of a human life. "Which brings us to the central question. Are you a willing heretic, consciously working to undermine the Imperium? Or are you a sleeper agent, programmed by some external force to carry out these actions without awareness?" In some ways, the second possibility is more disturbing than the first. The figure behind me moved again. I felt more needles pierce my skin, felt new chemicals flooding my system. The world began to fragment, breaking apart into shards of color and sensation. I tried to speak, but my voice came out as a wordless moan. "We are going to map your mind now," the interrogator said, his words coming from very far away. "Every memory, every thought, every hidden corner of your consciousness will be examined. If there is corruption, we will find it. If there is innocence, we will verify it. But understand this, Scribe Ven, the process is not gentle. When we are finished, you may not be the same person who entered this room. You may not be a person at all. But the truth will be known." I wanted to scream, to beg, to plead for mercy. But I could no longer control my body. I felt the servo arms attach themselves to my skull, felt the sharp intrusion of connectors boring through bone, felt my consciousness being invaded by something vast and cold and utterly indifferent to my suffering. And then I was falling. Not physically, my body remained locked in the chair, restraints biting into flesh, but mentally, plummeting down through layers of memory and identity, past the surface thoughts of daily life, past the accumulated routines and habits of 14 years, past childhood memories of the schola where I had been raised and trained, past even the faint recollections of my birth parents whom I had never known, down, down, into regions of my mind I did not know existed. And there, in the deepest darkness, I found the door, the same door from my dream, the one made of liquid metal that rippled and shifted. But this was no dream. This was real, or as real as anything could be in the unmapped territories of human consciousness. The singing was there too, beautiful and terrible, calling to me with a voice that was somehow both alien and intimately familiar. I approached the door. I had no choice. The interrogator's machines were driving me toward it, forcing me to confront what lay behind it. My hand, or the mental projection of my hand, reached for the handle. The door opened. Beyond it lay a memory I did not remember living. I stood in a corridor I did not recognize, in a part of the manufactorum that should not exist according to any map or schematic. Around me stood 6 other figures, their faces hidden by shadows, and before us all stood Hestor Grell, his face younger, his fingers intact, holding a book whose pages seemed to emit their own sick luminescence. "The Emperor," he was saying, his voice fervent with dangerous conviction, "is not a god. He never claimed to be a god. That fiction was created by those who came after him, who needed to control the masses through religious fear rather than rational governance. But we few who have found the truth, we can see past the lies. We can perceive reality as it truly is, not as the administratum tells us it must be. And I, the me in the memory, the me I did not remember being listened with rapt attention." I nodded. I agreed. I took the book when he offered it and read passages aloud, feeling their words resonate with some part of myself I had not known existed. The memory continued. Weeks of meetings, months perhaps, each one delving deeper into forbidden philosophy. We discussed the nature of faith, the architecture of belief, The possibility that humanity's species-wide worship of the Emperor had created something real in the Imperium, a gestalt consciousness born from trillions of souls crying out in unison. We read texts from before the Age of Strife, from the dark age of technology when humanity had reached heights we could scarcely imagine now. We questioned everything. And then came the night when Hestor brought something new. Not a book this time, but a small wooden disc covered in symbols. "A gift?" he said, his eyes bright with something that might have been madness or revelation or both. "From those who came before, from those who know the true shape of the universe." He taught us how to meditate on the symbols, how to open our minds to their meaning. And when we did, we felt something respond, something vast and intelligent and utterly inimical to human understanding, something that whispered promises of knowledge and power and transcendence. If only we would open ourselves fully to its influence. Most of us fled after that night, terrified by what we had touched. But I, the me in the memory, I lingered. I wanted to know more. I wanted to understand. Hestor saw my interest and smiled, and he gave me the disc, told me to keep it, to meditate on it in private, to let its truth seep into my mind gradually until I was ready for the next revelation. And then the memory ended. Not naturally, but abruptly, as though something had reached into my brain and severed it with a blade. The door slammed shut. I found myself back in the darkness, alone. The singing faded to silence. I surfaced back in my body to find the interrogator staring at me with something like satisfaction. "There," he said. "Now we have the truth. You were part of Hestor Grell's reading circle. You were exposed to heretical materials and to influences from beyond the veil. And then," he paused, scrolling through data on his display, "and then someone edited your memory. Someone with considerable skill and resources removed all trace of your involvement, buried it so deep that even you could not access it. But why?" My voice was hoarse from screaming, though I did not remember screaming. Why would someone do that? An excellent question. The interrogator stood and walked to a storage locker in the corner. He opened it and withdrew an object wrapped in black cloth. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing the wooden disc, Hestor's disc, the one from my hidden memory. "We found this in your quarters, Scribe Ven, hidden beneath a loose floor panel under your bed. You placed it there after your memory was edited, acting on post-hypnotic suggestion. You did not know you possessed it, but you protected it nonetheless, keeping it safe and accessible should you ever need to retrieve it. My quarters, my bed." I tried to imagine myself hiding something there, tried to remember the action, but there was nothing. Just a void where the memory should have been. "The question," the interrogator continued, "is who edited your memory and why? Was it the reading circle itself, attempting to protect its members by erasing evidence of their involvement? Or was it something else, some external actor with their own agenda?" And more importantly, he held up the disc, letting it catch the light. "What were you being prepared for? What was the purpose of programming you with hidden knowledge and buried compulsions?" I had no answers. I felt hollowed out, violated, as though everything I thought I knew about myself had been revealed as a comfortable fiction. Who was I? Really? The loyal scribe who had worked faithfully for 14 years? Or the secret heretic, buried beneath layers of false memory, waiting for some unknown trigger to activate? "There is a protocol," the interrogator said, "for handling cases such as yours. We cannot simply execute you. You may yet serve the Emperor's purposes, whether you know it or not. Your very existence is a thread we can pull, a trail that may lead us to the architects of this conspiracy. So we will do to you what was done before, but more thoroughly, more completely. We will edit your memory again. We will remove even the knowledge that you have been accused, that you have been interrogated, that this conversation ever happened. We will return you to your desk in Manufactorum level Sigma 7, and you will continue your work as before, never knowing that you are being watched, every action monitored, every word analyzed, every dream recorded and scrutinized. You'll turn me into a puppet, I whispered. A tool. You were always a tool, Scribe Ven. We all are. The only difference is that now you will serve consciously, even if you do not remember choosing to serve. He gestured to the figure behind me. Begin the process. The servo arms moved again, and I felt the intrusion intensify, felt something fundamental in my consciousness begin to dissolve. I tried to fight, tried to hold on to who I was, but it was like trying to hold water in my hands. Everything I was, everything I remembered, began to slip away. My last coherent thought, before the darkness took me completely, was a desperate question. Had I ever been real? Or had I always been this, a constructed identity? A mask worn by something deeper and darker? A sleeper agent in the Emperor's own machinery, waiting for the moment when my true purpose would be revealed? And then there was nothing. I remember the moment with perfect clarity, though I cannot explain why it feels significant. The morning shift bell had just rung across Manufactorum level Sigma 7, its bronze voice echoing through the prayer-ribbed vaults above our workstations, and I was reaching for my circuit-blessed stylus when Overseer Krell passed by my desk. He paused for a moment, his shadow falling across my parchments, and I felt an odd sensation like déjà vu, but deeper, more unsettling, as though I had lived this exact moment before, though that was impossible. Scribe Tertius Ven, he said, his voice carrying that familiar administrative flatness. Your efficiency ratings this quarter are exemplary. The administratum commends your devotion. Thank you, Overseer, I replied, feeling a strange tightness in my chest. I serve the Emperor. As we all do, he agreed, and moved on. I returned to my work, filling out requisition forms with practiced precision, each numeral transcribed according to sacred protocol, each calculation verified 3 times before being entered into the official record. 14 years I had worked at this desk, 14 years of faithful service, and I took pride in my dedication. I was a model scribe. I had never missed a shift, never questioned an order, never expressed anything but absolute devotion to the God Emperor. And yet, as I worked, I found my hand trembling slightly. I found myself arranging the numerals in patterns that felt significant without knowing why. I found my attention drawn repeatedly to a loose floor panel beneath my desk, though I could not remember what lay beneath it or why it should matter. That night, I dreamed of a door made of liquid metal, and singing that came from somewhere below, and a voice that whispered promises I could not quite hear. When I woke, my pillow was soaked with tears, though I did not remember crying. My thumb ached, where an old scar marked the place where a stylus had once cut me, though I could not remember the accident that caused it. I returned to work. I filled out my forms. I served the Emperor with absolute devotion, and deep in the sub-levels, in Processing Chamber 12, an inquisitorial interrogator made a notation in his records and smiled thinly at the pict feed showing my workspace, watching, waiting, for the moment when my programming would activate and reveal what I had been designed to do. The game of shadows and sleepers continued, as it had for centuries, as it would for centuries more, each piece moving in patterns they did not understand, serving purposes they could not comprehend, in the endless grinding machinery of the Imperium's paranoia. And I, Scribe Tertius Ven, worked on, innocent and guilty, victim and accomplice, human and something less than human, faithful and heretical, all at once and forever, until the day the interrogator's patience finally ended, and I was called back to that chamber to learn what I had truly been, and what I was about to become. But that day had not yet arrived. For now, I was simply a scribe, working in a manufactorum, serving the Emperor, one form at a time, one memory at a time, one stolen piece of myself at a time, given willingly to the great machine that ground all humanity down to their component parts and reassembled them into something useful. Praise the Emperor. Praise the Omnissiah. Praise the Administratum that watches over us all. I serve. I have always served. Even when I do not remember why.